I think a lot of people think self-sabotage is a fear of failure, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to fail. I want to protect myself. But I would argue actually self-sabotage is a fear of success. It's when you fear the very thing you say you want to accomplish.
Hello, Adam. Great to see you as always. And a quick question before we jump into today's topic. How hard is it for you to admit when you are wrong?
It is hard, although I like to pride myself on my ability to change my mind. I joke strong beliefs loosely held. And I always try to take a step back and say, what is the right answer here for the collective benefit? It's not, I try to remove myself, the ego, whatever. But there are times it's certainly hard, no doubt. And I think at times we're all stubborn in that we're only looking for evidence to support how we're right, which is known as confirmation bias. And, we can get in our own way. But I do try to take a step back and say, hey, what you're sharing sounds correct. I'm willing to change here.
Okay, I like it. A lot of conscious thoughtfulness there.
I try.
But what I really want to dig into today is self-sabotage.
Ooh.
And I know it's a favorite of yours, but what I really want to talk about is the fact that, like, I heard you saying things like, we're all stubborn. I try to be. Sometimes I, get stuck, blah, blah, everybody identifies. Adam, it's brains. It's brains. And I think this discussion today is going to be really helpful. People showing themselves self-compassion, right? Because we have this crazy machine in our head that does miraculous and wonderful things for our survival and experience of life, but also gets in the way. It's the brain in the way. It's the brain.
Yes.
So I hope you'll just kind of, go along with me here as I talk about the bit of brain science, and then we can kind of crack into, and share a hack. We have a brain hack. Stay with us. We'll get to it very quickly.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited. This is super important. I mean, we've been at this for 18 plus years now. Almost every issue of lack of consistency often comes down to some form of self-sabotage. So I'm really excited to dig into this. So let's go.
Let's go. So recently I've been working with this client of mine, dear client, who has proclaimed herself not a morning person. I know. We're all out there. We're either morning people or we're night people. Larks or morning doves, whatever the heck it is. I don't know what the saying is. Anyway, but she recognizes that she would really like to have a little bit of time in the morning to kind of get herself sorted out before she hits go on her insanely busy day. How familiar is this story? Right?
Very.
Right? Pretty much like everybody. And she was like, I've tried in the past. I hope everybody's tuning in and listening for these stories. I've tried in the past. I just can't do it. I just can't get up. I just have to hit the snooze. I just love sleep too much. Wow. This brain is super committed to surviving and sparing energy when it comes to thinking about changing this morning habit of sleeping as long as possible, right? And that's what brains do. They want to spare energy. They want to keep us comfortable. Why? Because that's how we survive, right? Like if we know lions and tigers live over there, the brain's going to just say, hey, over there doesn't even exist. Let's just go that way.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So go ahead. What do you have to say?
I was just going to say, I used to have it talking about changing your mind. So I used to believe humans are hardwired to avoid discomfort and seek pleasure. But I actually think I've changed my mind in that I think it's more just about avoiding discomfort. And I don't necessarily think we're always seeking pleasure, but anything that makes us feel uncomfortable, anything that brings discomfort to us, right? Whether it's physical, mental, cognitive dissonance, whatever it is, we're always trying to avoid that discomfort. Continue.
Yes. Yeah, and the reason why I just want to like build on that is because being uncomfortable means we're having to take in new information, build new narratives, build new stories. And that costs energy, right?
Right.
Like
And
yeah.
and as you said, the
It's
brain's
costly.
job is to conserve energy. That is
Right.
why habits form. That is why pattern recognition is a thing. It's always trying to conserve energy. It's always trying to make sense of this insane world using the least possible energy.
Yes. So I want to get back to my client that I was working with, the committed night owl, the one who just cannot get up in the morning. And we're just going to kind of take her through the steps here. So okay, I heard her saying, Adam, I want to get up in the morning and have time, but that's not who I am. I can't do it. And we were stuck. It was so clear that making this change was going to benefit her journey that we were on, right? To lose weight, to get healthy, to become somebody who is these things. This one thing has kind of been a stuck point for us. So, right away, anybody who's listening, where you get stuck, red flag, there's a narrative here that needs examining. So, we had to figure out what it was. And that narrative was I like to sleep too much. I'm not a morning person. I can't get up to an alarm, right? I cannot change. It's never happened. It's never going to happen. So we really like got it all out. We've listened to all the stories. We've decided who her brain has said she was forever and ever. And then we said, okay, let's try changing it. Now, Adam, what happens when you try to change something?
Well, I can go a million ways with that question. First thing, I just want to give a shout out to your client and all of our clients who are determined and committed to working through that discomfort versus recoiling and hiding. Because these feelings are inevitable, right? Any worthwhile journey is going to have these feelings. It's what you do when you have them. All right.
Yeah.
So when you have, what was the question again?
What happens when you try to change something?
Well, it depends what kind of change it is.
Okay. No, this is good because this brings us to our hack. Okay. So let me tell you what we did. So the first time we discussed it, she was like, okay, I'm going to try and get up 30 minutes early. Right away, I just thought, okay. Okay, let's see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
Adam, guess what happened?
Too much.
Oh, yeah. No, it didn't happen.
Yeah.
Snooze was like her drug, right? And
Right.
it just wouldn't happen. And then, we had the discussion like, well, okay, like obviously this is too much for the brain. And there's a lot of all or nothing going on here because then our brain does something. Well, like if you're going to become a morning person, well, morning people get up at least 30 minutes before their
Right.
alarm or an hour. Oh, and they've got all these routines. I mean, that brain is just building the case.
Yes.
Don't do it.
Yes.
Right?
So before we give the hack, sorry, but I do think it's
fine.
worthwhile. Can we, and the hack is coming, I promise, but can we touch on just symptoms of self-sabotage, and also maybe I can share my definition of self-sabotage as well. And then I think maybe we end with the hack.
Okay, sounds good. So symptoms of self-sabotage are?
So symptoms are, you feel like you're always, you're pressing the gas, but you're also pressing the brake. You have a good day or two, and then you feel like you have a quote unquote bad day or two. You feel like you're always making excuses. You feel like there's always a rationalization, right? So you have a goal, and then a day or two later, you're like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, or there's always some reason it doesn't happen, right? Like you make a commitment and the follow through is never there. And then you have a reason or 10 reasons that it didn't happen.
Yes.
To be clear, like the brain is working in the background to keep you from making these changes oftentimes, right? Like, and I say that again, not to let people off the hook, but also like, don't beat yourself up because your brain's working well. Like, awesome brain. Now pipe down because I want to make some changes. So that's really great. That's a great way to identify like when this is happening. And so when you see those red flags, those symptoms of self-sabotage, it's a great time to get a little quiet and say, okay, what is the story here? that my brain is clearly so committed to that it's getting in the way of my taking action and making progress towards the changes I'm trying to make.
Right.
Did we cover them all?
Yeah. And I think I'll just share an example of like how it might look in real life. Right. So,
Okay.
Someone and very similar to your client's example, someone wants to wake up early. They want to start exercising. Right. And we have to understand that part of our brain, or at least our subconscious, is kind of like an amazing chess player, right? It's thinking 5-6 moves ahead because, again, it wants to conserve energy. So let's say in this case, and I wrote this down just so I don't mess it up, because let's say you want to go to the gym in the morning, okay? And then, so move 1 is go to the gym this morning. Move 2 is stick to my exercise and nutrition plan. Move 3 is lose weight. Move 4, gain it all back. I always do. Move 5, people will look at me like I'm a failure. Move 6, something will happen. I'll fall off track and I'll gain back all the weight lost, then some, because I always do. Right? So like in that moment you wake up, you might be hitting snooze, you might feel tired, you're like, I don't feel like it. There's also a part of you that is thinking a few moves ahead. You're like, well, what's the point of today if I'm just going to fall off track later on? Right? So, and this is kind of laying the ground for the hack that inevitably that's so powerful. But a lot of people don't let it work because we'll get to it. I don't want to spoil it.
No, you're fine. I think it's fine to bring it up now. So there's kind of a lot of things going on in that chess scenario, right?
Yes.
Like, whew. And how many people out there listening right now, have been through that over and over and over again? I mean, it's maddening, right? So here's the hack, guys. And I know everybody has heard it, like big changes don't work. That's why diets don't work. That's why committing to some outrageous workout calendar and schedule when you've not done that in years or ever doesn't work. That's why deciding you're going to get up an hour earlier when you're clearly, a night owl is maybe not going to work, right? Like, and maybe it works for a day or two, but right, your brain has it all planned out. It's not going to work in the end. So we're just going to set all this up for failure. So I get to be right. That's the brain in the background. So here's the hack, and everybody's going to roll their eyes at him. I even rolled my eyes, but also this is how you do it, right? So the brain has this alarm system. We like to call it FDR. Adam loves FDR, right? Fear, discomfort.
Yeah.
Go.
Fear,
you do
discomfort, doubt, and resistance.
The brain's alarm system. And when we make big changes, boy, that just fires off right away. Okay, so for all those people who are participating in My Body Tutor, and for those of you who are thinking about participating in My Body Tutor, when that goes off, here's what you need to understand. Small incremental changes over time are the way to fly just under that radar system, right? Now, you're going to bump into it anyway, because how do you know what is a small enough, incremental enough change to make in order to elicit change that the brain doesn't panic about, right? It's a good sign you're headed in the right direction. And if it feels like it's too much, you work with your coach, you dial it back. If you don't have a coach, get a coach. They'll help you learn to dial it back. But that's the hack. And it's not, that's how it works. If you make too big of changes too fast, your brain's alarm system is going to go off and it's going to sabotage you. It's designed to. So the best way to do it, the best way to fly under the radar and keep the alarms off is to make small changes. And this is what we did, Adam. This is what my client did. At first, she committed to waking up 5 minutes earlier, which, listen, the brain wanted to tell her all sorts of stories about that. Well, that's definitely not a morning person. You're never going to make it. What are you going to do with 5 minutes of time? It's not even enough time.
Right. It's not big enough of a change. What's the point?
Oh my gosh. The brain was so psh.
Yep.
Guess what? She's rocking. She is rocking it so good. We're up to 8 minutes a lot of mornings. Listen, brain's up here going, 8 minutes. What's 3 more minutes, right? But she's embracing it. Her brain is okay with it. It's not really noticing anything going on. So it's letting her do it, right? She's not sabotaging. We're not stop, start. We're not two-footed driving here.
Yep.
So that's the hack. What do you have? You want to add anything to that?
No, I think, it's so challenging though, because there's always the part of us that thinks, well, what's the point if it's not big enough? What's the point? And we know where that leads. And then there's the part of us that's like, well, it's like, it's just this internal conflict. It's too small. It's not going to do anything. It's got to be bigger, but we're stuck in this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
move always is small changes done consistently, right?
Yes.
That is an unbeatable combination. And
Yes.
the small changes can be tricky for many. And the consistency, of course, is very tricky for many. But when you do it over time and you stick with it, it is an unbeatable combination. And that is who you change. That is how you change who you are and how you see yourself.
Yep. It's how you change your mind.
Yes.
How you change your brain, right? It is the way to do it. Like there's no other way, without severe FDR. And you might as well just lock yourself up.
Right.
If you're going to try and like manhandle yourself.
And like, do we want to touch base on like, the example I had with my client and go into that, or should we save that for another video?
No, you absolutely can.
So I'll touch on it. I think a lot of people think self-sabotage is a fear of failure, right? It's like, oh, I don't want to fail. I want to protect myself. But I would argue actually self-sabotage is a fear of success. It's when you fear the very thing you say you want to accomplish. And this comes out in many ways. For example, with a client recently, it turned out that being overweight was a security blanket for her. Why? Because if and when she lost the weight, then it meant she had no excuse to not start dating. She had no excuse to not start being more social. She had no excuse to not put herself out there more. So for her, being overweight wasn't actually the problem. It was actually the solution to other challenges and problems she had. So, and a really powerful thing to do is identify, like how you think your life will be better when you lose the weight, and B, why you don't think it'll be better. And when you do the B part, when you focus on why you don't think it'll be better, it's almost always stories and narratives and assumptions we had, but rarely is it actually facts, right? And it all comes back to our brain wants to maintain homeostasis, right? It wants to protect itself. It wants to remain the same. Change is uncomfortable. And as we talked about, it doesn't want to be uncomfortable. So
That's right.
When you identify how your life will actually be better, how you think it'll be worse, because again, in her case, she thought she'd have to put herself out there. She might have to start dating. People are mean. There's all sorts of things we come up with. But then you actually challenge those assumptions and you ask yourself, is this actually true? Or am I just assuming this? Or am I using prior evidence? And sure, we all have prior evidence, but it doesn't mean that's every meeting or encounter you have is going to be like that, right? So I also think thinking about it from a more, just thinking about how success can actually make you feel like your life is going to be worse off, not better off, is really powerful as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of feeling involved, with this process as well. So I think like success to the brain means all this changing it's going to have to do. Very costly, very costly. So it just builds its case against that, right?
Yes.
And that's why it's not fear of failure. It's fear of success because the brain's terrified, that it's not going to be able to keep you alive through it all. So, and you have to go through those assumptions with a fine-tooth comb. Well, it's not actually true that every person you meet means you have to go on a date with them, right? Like,
right.
Okay. But the brain is really good at building cases.
Right.
So,
and to me, fear of failure is the easy one. That enables you to keep doing more of the same, which is exactly what your brain wants. It's the fear of success. And
yes.
This is why I believe so strongly in what we do, because any worthwhile journey is going to have fear, discomfort, doubt, and resistance. It's going to have FTR. There's going to be self-sabotage. There's going to be sabotage, right? If you're embarking on any change, there's going to be a part of you that thinks, why am I doing this? What's the point? Is this worth it? That is normal. That is a normal part of any worthwhile change. If it wasn't a worthwhile change, there would be no internal conflict, right? So use us. When you use us and you talk about how you're feeling and you share how you're feeling and you lean into the FDR versus recoiling and hiding, I promise you success will be inevitable. Unfortunately, there's no way around this stuff, right? And this is
No.
why so many people come to us, and My Body Tutor is the last program they ever do, because they actually work on this stuff, the stuff that matters, right? Just following a diet for a little bit or following an exercise plan for a little bit is great, but the inevitable roadblocks are going to always come back up. And if we don't confront it, we're never going to conquer it. We're just kind of kicking the can down the road. All this to say, use us. We are here to help you. This is what we live for. This is what we want to do for you.
Absolutely. All right, gang, thanks for tuning in. I hope this discussion that Adam and I just had about the brain and the ways that it's trying to sabotage you was helpful. Get in there, challenge those limiting beliefs, fly under the radar, small incremental changes. And until next time, take good care. We'll see you soon.